Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Very pleased today. We're continuing our business conversations, and I'm very glad to welcome an old friend of the family, someone I've known personally for many years, Ulf Schneider, founder of the Schneider Group. And Ulf, very nice to see you today. I'd like to kick off with a little bit of personal history from you. I know it, I think, but give us a little bit of your background and how the heck did you end up in Russia?
Yeah, Danny, thank you very much for the kind introduction. For those of you who do not know me yet, Ulf Schneider, a German businessman for more than 20 years in Russia now. How did I come here? Probably was always a dream already from my childhood. I remember well, it was at the age of 7 when I was with my parents at the Polish-Soviet border, and I saw a huge fence. And I asked my daddy, well, what is behind the fence? He said, it's Russia. He didn't say Soviet Union, he said, it's Russia. And this life, he will never make it to there. So as a 7-year-old young boy, then my father said, you never go there, then you understand where you should go. No, so it's developed step by step. My professional career, I started with Procter & Gamble in Germany, when they still had the Eastern Europe headquarters in Frankfurt, or one of the suburbs of Frankfurt. And I was picked as that person who should answer all the calls that came from Moscow. Simply because during my studies of economics in Germany and the US, I took some classes in Russian, and this qualified me for any professional questions that came from Moscow to the Eastern Europe headquarters. I found this very impressive, what my colleagues of P&G told me, success stories every week. So I thought, well, that's a good place. I want to go there. It was then not Procter & Gamble who brought me to Russia, but the German insurance company Allianz. My thought was for 2 years, and then maybe I make it further to Asia. But these 2 years were so exciting that I decided to realize one of my dreams I probably already had in my youth or maybe in my childhood, to run my own business. And so I started 2003 with Schneider Group, a consulting business. Although I don't like the word consulting too much, we are more those who implement for our clients their business strategy for Russia, and not only Russia, also for the CIS. So we accompany with everything as a one-stop partner, with everything from the very first market analysis, eventually also localization projects accompanying when setting up production, everything in between, like company registration, tax, legal, accounting, ERP structures, import, handling, customs clearance. We are very strong in the meantime in interim management, taking over the general director function or the CFO function. We also offer services like outstaffing, employer of record, something what is well requested at the moment in Russia as well as in the neighboring countries for different reasons. And we do this in the meantime in 9 countries, Russia and the countries in Central Asia, in the Southern Caucasus, Ukraine, and I'm very glad that our Ukrainian office is fully functioning. We are in Poland and we are in Belarus. So I'm very happy that my place of residence now for a little more than 20 years is Moscow, but traveling a lot and traveling again more and more because our offices are growing. We plan to open another 3 offices this year still in Kyrgyzstan, in Azerbaijan, and in Georgia. So then we cover the entire Central Asia and Southern Caucasus region. But I understand we will get back to that later.
Thank you very much, Ulf. That's a good description of yourself and the company. Globally, you know, look at the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, or any serious newspaper or media outlet. We have just short brief before we move to Russia and CIS. How are you seeing and the drivers of business for your clients and yourself, you know, global, Europe, Germany?
Well, I would always distinguish now between the pre and the post 24 February period. Before the 24th of February, it was a grow and gain strategy for most of our clients, as well as for myself in the Russia CIS region. Now, after the 24th of February, the strategy for Russia and for Central Asia, Southern Caucasus is very different, certainly. Yeah, in Russia, for many of our clients, it is the question how to survive, and it is quite interesting to understand why it comes that they have to fight for surviving. It's not that much that there is no demand for their products. It is partially because of logistics problems. And it is to quite some extent, and this was in particular, I would say, in Q2, is the public discussion, how Russia is perceived and how doing business in Russia, and partially also in Belarus, is perceived from a business ethics point of view. This seems to me was one of the major drivers for most of our clients in Q2. If I may add, certainly also for myself, this was one of the serious questions after 24th of February. Can I, for myself, answer, do I want to continue doing business in Russia? This was a serious question. I came to the conclusion, yes, I do want to consider. I find that reasonable. I want to do everything what I can contribute to end this military conflict and to come back to peace. I do not see that I would contribute to this by closing down my practice in Russia. And moreover, if I may go a little bit back into history as a German citizen, as someone who was grown up on the western side of the inner German border, but very close to the border. And I'm still very glad today that my parents found it very important to visit friends on the eastern side of the inner German border very often, once a quarter. And I mean, this was during the coldest and most serious times of the Cold War and the Iron Curtain. And we found it very important. There was no doubt, not in the West, not in the East. There was no doubt that these contacts, that it is very important to not only keep them, but to further develop them, in particular during these difficult times. And it's not only about the contacts. We also had no doubt in the West that we want to develop the inner German trade between West Germany and East Germany, because it was in the interest of the people who lived on the other side of the Iron Curtain. Why I say this, I very often remember these times and I'm thinking, why today we believe that we make things better by cutting trade. I personally, based on what I just said and from history, I have a little bit different view on that. And so this was for me also the major reason why I said, I want to continue my business in Russia and also in Belarus. And I still want to contribute, being a kind of bridge builder on business level in order to somehow contribute that communication does not totally stop between the West and Russia. And also, I certainly feel responsibility for all the 350 staff I employ in Russia. I feel responsibility for them, for their families. These are great people, and I want them to also in the future be able to contribute to our, what we even call our company mission, to be a kind of bridge between the West and the East. So sorry for getting now a little bit aside your concrete question, but these are my main thoughts why I believe I should and I want to continue the business. For many of our clients, yes, it is extremely difficult. And as I said, it is because of logistics issues very often, but it's also because of the public discussion and the public opinion, or in particular also the view that is expressed by the media, by the press. And I had a lot of talks with quite some of my clients. I should say those who, because of whatever reasons, either logistics issues or because of the public opinion, are now decided to either exit the market or to at least wind down partially the business. They are all looking for strategies how you can keep the opportunities for the future. And what we see at the moment is, for instance, management buyout is one of the concepts that become quite popular these days. All this with, it seems to me, the thought we give the business into other hands, and we in the West, we can say publicly we exit the market. However, we keep very good ties with those who now are the new owners, so the previous management and also the current management of the company.
I'm asked it sometimes a very generic one, and I know you have deep relationships with the German business community. Are you seeing a difference between corporate behavior from French Germans, maybe French, German, Italian on the one hand, American, British on the other, or is that more random?
I wouldn't say that it's more random, but I believe the major difference is not between German, French, or British business. My perception is the major difference is between publicly listed business and on the other side, family-owned business. And there is a lot in between, but if we take these two cases, the family-owned businesses naturally have a more long-term view and do not look at short-term profit maximization. And moreover, the family-owned business is usually more ready to, in public, also defend their own view, what has to be done. Without going into any confidential information, certainly, but in Germany, you have seen the owner of the Globus hypermarkets, which is, well, a German family-owned business. It's in the state of Saarland, headquartered, and they have, to my mind, about 20 hypermarkets in Russia. Yeah, it's about 20. And the owner here in Germany, in public, he explained why he believed that it's the right decision to continue business in Russia. This is easier for someone who runs a family-owned business than for someone who is the CEO of a listed company.
Thank you, Ulf. I agree. And related to that, of course, is the question of size. You know, a big multinational, publicly owned, 4 or 5 factories, 2,000 people. Extracting is much more difficult than maybe a mid-size as well. But you're definitely right, the ownership structure is a key driver. Just a question, Ulf, I do know your business. Does that lend itself? Are you active in advising people how to stay and how to leave? Or are you more operational in your role?
Indeed, at the moment, I have every week at least 5 interesting talks with clients where we discuss their strategy for the future. And not naming now concrete cases, but I can probably talk about a couple of interesting questions. I start with a Polish businessman who is, well, headquartered in Poland with his firm, a family-owned business, and has a well-established subsidiary in Russia. He called me and said, Mr. Schneider, here's the task for you. I want to communicate to my Polish friends that I'm leaving the Russian market, and to my Russian friends, I want to communicate I will be staying on the market. And overall, I want to do it the way that the ownership structure with the Russian business stays with me. So here's the task for you, how to do this. I said, well, first of all, let's involve a communication expert into this case. What I'm not joking, but indeed, I also recently did. So we are in the process of partnering with a well-established communication company on communication strategies, which seems to me during these times makes a lot of sense to have such experts on board. But so this is something what I see indeed very often, that foreign investors are looking for a kind of hybrid structure. So on the one hand side, giving them the opportunity, the possibility in the West to publicly say we are leaving the Russian market. This may mean that you entirely leave the market. This may mean that you may consider to close down a couple of business lines, but not all of them. Yeah, you can always choose interesting wording that give the Western public the impression now you satisfy the needs, or you satisfy the public opinion on the one hand side, but still give you good opportunities to continue part of your business in Russia. So these hybrid considerations is something what I see in almost all the talks that I have. Also, remember I mentioned quite popular becomes the strategy of a management buyout. Why is that? Yeah, because on the one hand side, you say you give up the business. At the same time, with the management, you hope that you have an owner you still can well cooperate with. And what I also identified during quite some talks when we consulted on management buyout structures, it is an interesting consideration to do on the one hand side the management buyout, but at the same time to consider a second minority shareholder. Based on some requests, we actually offer this now, that we, Schneider Group, may become a minority shareholder. What is the reason behind that? First of all, it is for the headquarters, or I should say the ex-headquarters. They have, besides the ex-management, a consultant like us, Schneider Group, who is can perform a kind of controlling function. While still you say you legally separated from your ex-subsidiary company. And at the same time, what is interesting according to Russian legislation, there's certainly always the risk when you do a management buyout, the management as the new owner, usually you foresee a kind of buyback option that the headquarters can within 5, within 10, or sometimes even 15 years, can buy back the legal entity in Russia. But you never know what happens in the meantime. Maybe suddenly there are some differences that let them just go away from each other. So having a minority shareholder gives you more confidence and legally also more security that the buyback option can be used later, because the majority shareholder cannot sell its shares to any third party. The minority shareholder has the first right to take over the shares if the majority shareholder tries to sell them on the market. So this gives you additional security. The thought behind the management buyout is all the time, let's hope for better times and let's secure for the Western company all opportunities that may later exist on the market. We unfortunately have a couple of cases also where we did not only become a minority shareholder, but we became the 100% shareholder with the task then, after taking over 100% of the shares, to liquidate the company. The idea behind that was that a Western company can report on the market, we already left the Russian market. It's not the option we preferred, but nevertheless, those who find it important to communicate the market, we already left, we do offer this, let's say, immediate exit strategy. And of course, there are many other aspects. We started to create a team of operational interim managers. I have 6 people on board at the moment, experienced Western European managers who live in Russia and who have available time to operationally step into existing business where either the Western headquarters says we want to separate, but we don't see the current management taking over the operations, or where the headquarters said we have to wind down, but we still want to keep it on the low operational level, does not justify a full-time CEO. So maybe we find a part-time operational manager. This is then someone who could come from the team that I just established. So these are just a couple of examples of strategies that during the last, in particular, the last, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks, I discussed with quite some of our clients. And let me maybe sum up this a little bit. When you read in the Western media about all the cases of companies who are leaving Russia, one still should understand, I don't know the exact numbers for all the countries, but there were about 4,000 German investors in Russia. So German companies who have either a rep office or a branch or a subsidiary legal entity in Russia. The vast majority of them stay on the market. This we also should not forget when we read in the newspapers about all those who are leaving the country.
Many quick comments from me, Ulf, and then some quick questions and then bigger questions. Yeah, overall, amongst my group members, many overlap with you. I'd say overall about 25% plus will have left de jure de facto the market by Christmas, of which some are in the process of downsizing to the end of the year to a very small presence, symbolic almost, but to your point, they don't want to leave formally legally, and they will keep a tiny toehold with the hope of coming back, as you say. We're seeing, by the way, more, of course, in the IT industry leaving Western companies, but fewer in pharmaceutical and health. So that number of 25% is much higher for IT and much lower for pharma and health and so forth. But there are many ways, as you say, of half leaving, leaving and not ever. And what those services you are offering are very interesting, some of which even I had not heard of before. Quick questions, Ulf. I'm also hearing that, you know, the management buyout, one challenge, of course, is money, although some companies are selling off at below market price. But I'm seeing management buyout combined with a local authority. And I can think of 1 or 2 of the big departures that we've seen on that structure. My first question will be, do you see some of that? Secondly, this option to come back, the period of time, you mentioned 5, 10, 15 years. Do companies include periods as short as 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, starting with the last question, I think the most public case, that is McDonald's probably. And everything what we know from the rumors and some facts, it looks like the agreement is a buyback option for 15 years. But I do know, and I certainly cannot now mention names, but I do know discussions between management and the headquarters also talking about 2 or 3 years. But usually you definitely, in most cases, I would say it is more typical to have 5 to 10 years while you can exercise the buyback option. 2-3 years looks to me from a headquarters perspective as a rather short period of time, and you run the risk that maybe the new growth period might be after the buyback option expired.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. Thank you. Just to take us a bit further, and then I want to wrap up with a question on which you're very knowledgeable about, the stands and caucuses. But just those of your clients who are remaining, of which there are many, and same, I endorse that. I'm talking with many people like yourself, Ulf, and I'm partially surprised that business for some of them is so good. You know, pharma and health, food and beverages, consumer products, those sectors, you know, March, April, May, June were good, very good. And I was just, some of them, of course, these executives are saying, they say that the second half of the year will be more moderate. And it was a nice summary by one executive who said, Danny, we're staying, I'm sure we will stay, and in the future we'll have a viable business, but it will be smaller and less profitable than it used to be, which I thought was maybe not a bad summary for many. So the question, Ulf, is those of your many clients who are staying, how are they doing at the moment overall, and what do you think their business future is?
That's a tricky and very difficult question. What is their future? They do have a future. This, first of all, I would say as a definite statement. Indeed, as you indicated, many of our clients use this time not only for downwinding the business, but also for a kind of focusing on really core competences and making sure you work efficiently and hopefully also profitable. So this is a good time to reconsider your entire corporate setup in Russia. Yes, there is a future. I believe the Russian consumers, and I think also Russian officials, do not want to end up in only Chinese, Indian, Turkish, Brazilian products. I do see some people, and it's maybe a little bit driven also by the Russian media, who say, well, the Western business leaves the country, so what? The Chinese are waiting. I recently was invited by a Russian newspaper, Kommersant, for a discussion, a live discussion. And one representative of a state-owned consulting company came with this sentence, well, the Western business leaves Russia, so let them go, we don't need them. We have lots of alternatives. And I interrupted him actually and said, I'm very sorry, but I totally disagree with you. The Western engineers, the German, the Austrian, the French, the Italian engineers, you cannot replace them by the Chinese. Yes, the Chinese will catch up in terms of quality, but not in terms of after-sales service. When you purchase a machinery, and with machinery, you always need a kind of after-sales service. With a German, with an Austrian, with a French, with an Italian and other European engineers, you can be sure if something goes wrong, next day they will sit in the aircraft and will fly to Siberia. It's now a little bit more difficult than before, but they will do it. Even the destination might be closer to China. I very much doubt the Chinese engineer will show up within 2 days. So I believe there is still good opportunities for the Western businesses. And it also grants a certain opportunity for my company, I should say. I mean, I had been more happy we were not faced with this current situation. But of course, I also have to make up my mind, I mean, what kind of products, for instance, for the future I have to offer. One of the products that I will be offering is a kind of ex-works import service. What does it mean? So I will offer in the future Western manufacturers who have more difficulties than before to deliver to Russia, that I say, we can make an X works deal. I will arrange that from your production site, we pick up the machinery, and for you, it will be a domestic deal within Germany, within Austria, or at least within the European Union. And then we, Schneider Group, we make the export from Schneider Group in one of the European countries to Schneider Group in Russia, and Schneider Group in Russia then makes a local deal with the Russian client. I'm sure this is something what many manufacturers will be looking for, in particular those who winded down their business, but still see either occasional or regular or even increasing demand in the future with their products. So I'm not so pessimistic on the business level, but it requires indeed more sophisticated skills how to manage all this. I think it requires technically, professionally, different skills, but it also requires a kind of mentality in business that you have seen during the Cold War period, also with quite some European entrepreneurs. In Germany, there was a great manager, Otto Wolf von Ammerungen. He was for a long time the president of the German Chamber Network, and he was also the chairman of the German Eastern Business Committee. And he was called Mr. Eastern Trade. Minister, sorry, he was called the Minister Eastern Trade. He was the person, I think, whom, thanks to him, we more than 50 years ago, we concluded this deal on the gas pipeline and the gas deliveries from Soviet Union to Germany. I think we need for the future quite some such people, and the mindset that was behind these people who in the 70s in particular took initiative and wanted to get things done and wanted to get trade done in order to improve the lives of people on both sides of the Iron Curtain. These people we need also for the future.
I want to take us now in rounding off into an area of, you've got many areas of expertise, but certainly stands in the Caucasus, as you say, for your company and your expansion there. And, you know, I know you've traveled there a lot and have many strategic and operational thoughts. Many companies who are downsizing or leaving Russia or staying in Russia are looking for more opportunities. And many of our mutual clients are looking at the former Soviet republics, stands and Caucasus. How do you see it?
I call Central Asia and the Southern Caucasus the tiger states. Would not say it's comparable to the Asian tiger states, how we called them about 30 years ago, South Korea, Taiwan, and others. But it could develop in this direction. I'm quite optimistic. Last week I was in Armenia. 2 weeks ago I was in Uzbekistan. Next week I will be in Kazakhstan. So I'm traveling quite a lot to the region. And we will be opening new offices. So we have offices in that region in Armenia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. We will be opening still this year in Kyrgyzstan, in Georgia, and in Azerbaijan to cover the entire region. Because for me, this is a real growth region. When I look at the development in Armenia, Georgia, I mainly see that Russian businesses move to there. Certainly quite some Russian business from the IT industry. Find it very attractive to move to Georgia and Armenia. Still open, is this like a transit country for them? Or do they feel comfortable to work long-term from the Southern Caucasus? With the Western business, I see certain additional interest in the Southern Caucasus. However, Western business I mainly see is now very eager on Central Asia, and here in particular, certainly Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. I think the two countries will be competing with each other for all the new Western investments that will come over the next 5-10 years. These investments will not come automatically. And this question was raised very often. So is there already much more business now diverted from Russia to Kazakhstan to Uzbekistan by Western companies? So far, I would say this is a good hope. And many Western businesses, what I see, they are paying more attention to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and investigating the market, maybe setting up small presence. But to say now this becomes really the market where next year already we see huge foreign direct investments, I'm a little bit cautious. Yes, it will be developing, but it takes time. I know no CEO in the headquarters decides spontaneously based on the current geostrategic situation and the military conflict here in the region. No one decides spontaneously to now set up a production site in Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan. It is prospective. The countries have to do their homework. Both countries, I think, have to do their homework in order to, in particular, improve the suppliers structure, the local suppliers. Because what does not make sense to, in most cases at least, it does not make sense to set up production in Central Asia, but you have to import all the spare parts in order to produce a finished product. Then it is more or less just an assembling. In order to really have a good value adding locally, the countries have to very intensively work on growing their tier 1, tier 2 supplier structure locally. So this, it seems to me, is one of the important aspects. I also see some Russian business coming to Central Asia. Interestingly, I see this more in Uzbekistan than in Kazakhstan. Reason being, maybe Kazakhstan is considered too close ally to Russia, and those who leave Russia might prefer a country like Uzbekistan that is not that closely connected and not a member of Eurasian Economic Union. But there might be different reasons. But again, as I said in the beginning, I think Central Asia in particular has the potential to become the growth region, and the countries have the maybe unique opportunity to develop, like 30 years ago, the tiger states in Asia.
I think that's a very nice synopsis, Ulf, and I know that's based, as you said just a couple of minutes ago, on extensive travel.
If I may just add one number that maybe demonstrates what's currently going on in our Tashkent and Almaty office. On average, we increased staff from beginning of this year by today by 25%.
Good. And as I say, I just know many of my group members are saying, Danny, we want to do more in Kazakhstan. I was talking to the managing director, Russia, of a consumer products company, and she said, we had a WhatsApp call, and she said, I'm taking this in my car in Kazakhstan. And she says, I spend 50% of my time here now. So there are movements. But no, Ulf, as I say, I appreciate your expertise. You've been dedicated to the region for a very long time. So it's not just a quick fashion for you, far from it.
If you allow quickly 1 minute still to return to Russia, and you mentioned fast-moving consumer goods and the pharmaceutical sector, where you say so, these are sectors that are not so much affected by the downwards trend, even the other way around, partially with pharmaceuticals. This indeed I can also confirm, and what I see is that in Brussels and in Berlin and in Paris, they pay quite some attention to making sure that the sanction regime does not negatively affect the fast-moving consumer goods and pharmaceutical industry. I had a couple of cases where we discussed with clients that because of the risk, it is considered as a dual-use equipment, that for certain machinery in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, there was a risk they could not deliver to Russia. And we had a talk with a deputy minister in the German Chancellor's office, who immediately took initiative to solve this matter and made sure import is possible for those goods in pharmaceutical and fast-moving consumer goods industry. So this I also find very important, and would like to also encourage all the investors and traders in these areas, don't give up on Russia. The people need all of you.
Absolutely, there's no shadow. The best and most enjoyable presentations I have, Ulf, are with pharma and health companies, because they have a viable business future. But obviously from that reputational critique, they can say we are saving lives and adding to the quality of life, which is very, very true. And is not something that should be treated, you know, very short-termistically or glibly. Far from it. No, thanks a lot. Ulf, any other closeout thought, comment?
I think an interesting aspect is the HR market, which maybe we still can cover for a couple of minutes.
Yes, please.
When I look at Russia, my current impression, well, considering it's second part of July, I think we are not at the bottom yet. I think in fall probably we will see more people who suffer because of unemployment, losing their jobs, and many people on the Russian labor market, I think, did not realize yet how difficult it will be in the future. That's my current perception. What the situation in Central Asia and also in the Southern Caucasus is exactly the other way around. So we had foreseen for quite some people extraordinary salary increases. We had to look at quite some individual cases, because people are suddenly faced with high increases in rental prices because of all the people from Russia coming to Central Asia and to Southern Caucasus. Partially for renting an apartment, you paid 2 or 3 times more than you did half a year ago. And so this makes it certainly for many colleagues very difficult to cope with their living standard and to ensure the minimum required. So here, yes, we have contradicting developments in Russia on the one hand side, and Central Asia, Southern Caucasus on the other side. Where many of the, I would say, the experience that we made in Russia during the hottest phases, we can now well apply on the markets in the South in Central Asia.
Thanks for bringing up HR, Ulf. I just didn't bring it for time reasons, but now the feedback I'm getting from many conversations is a little bit contradictory in Russia, and I'd like your experience. I have a good number of companies who say, if we want HR as we're restructuring or even adding a little bit more, then there's no problem finding talent. People are on the job market, companies have left, etc., which is fairly logical. However, I have almost as many companies, Ulf, who say, Danny, we are looking for people, we are looking for some qualified, upper middle management, and it's difficult to find them at a reasonable market price. What do you see, and where are you on that spectrum?
I see all different directions, I should say, and it really depends on the position eventually and on the industry sector. What I can say, doing a little bit marketing and recruiting for my own firm, so if there are good payroll accountants, for instance, who are listening now on the team lead level, then please apply with us. We are looking for such people at the moment, and it's not easy to find them. While you have other functions, for instance, in administrative personnel, where I would say the market goes in a different direction, and people have to more show what qualification they do in order to justify their current jobs. So it is very difficult to answer this question, or to say it really depends on the position, it depends on the industry sector, it depends on the functionality. There's no trend only in one direction.
That's a good answer, Ulf. Thank you. No, because that's where I see things as well, which is I think curious as well. Maybe I would have expected, you know, a buyer's market, the employer's market, and you're echoing my thoughts. On the ground, it's much more nuanced, much more mixed.
As I said, Danny, my personal perception is, let us wait another 2 months, and I'm afraid the market might, in Russia, the HR market might show in one direction. I hope I'm wrong. Yeah. From an employee's point of view and from a market development point of view, but I'm afraid I might be right.
I do not disagree. Thanks, Ulf. Ulf, thanks a million for your time today. It's always a pleasure talking and listening to you. Very interested in your developments and the new offices that you're planning and that. Your personal resilience and that of your company. Great people, great teams, which is, I know you have, but many others do as well, and you've alluded to it. So once again, warm thanks, personal thanks, and all good luck in the future, and fingers crossed for Russia and the Russian people and our Ukrainian friends.
Thank you very much, Danny. As always, very interesting talk with you.
Thank you.